Hey everyone, and welcome to Pittsburgh International Race Complex for the 65th Cumberland Fire and Ice Majors. This is our second and final preseason race before the Formula Tour Championship starts at Mont Tremblant at the end of May. If you remember, we raced at VIR a few months ago, and so after this race, it's a one-off for us. I know I said in a previous video that we were hoping to do all the majors to qualify for the runoffs. I've sort of looked at my finances and sort of realized that it's best to just focus on the Formula Tour Championship. So hopefully we can do a few more majors, but we're definitely going to focus more on the Formula Tour Championship in Quebec. So the race today is 11 laps, and then the race tomorrow will be 17 laps. So let's take a look at the circuit. And Pit Race is my home track. I grew up here racing go-karts over on the go-kart circuit and as a teenager, and then I did a lot of testing here in the Pro Mazda way back when they only had the North Circuit. And they added the South track a few years ago, and I may be biased since it is my home circuit, but I really think that it turns the track into something really special and really world-class. There's a lot of passing zones. Turns 1, turn 3, 7, and 17 are sort of the obvious ones, but turns 5 and 12 are also places where you could get a run on someone. There's a lot of fast blind corners where you sort of just need to throw the car into the corner and hope the track goes where you think it does. Yeah, I think that it's only a matter of time really before they attract something like an IMSA race or an IndyCar race, which would be really, really cool. So let's take a look at the qualifying results, and look at that, we're on pole. 0.8 of a second ahead of second place, and a whopping 3.5 seconds faster than the third place Formula Ford. And we'll ignore that Formula 500 cars for now. They'll come back and play a pretty big role in race 2, but in this first race, there's not a whole lot that they're doing for us, for me anyways. So going into the race, I'm feeling pretty confident that we're going to get a good result. But of course, the main purpose of entering this event is to prepare for the race at Mont Tremblant. Make sure that everything on the car is prepped, is working well, and that I get more seat time and get more comfortable in the car and keep knocking the rust out of my brain that's built up over the last several years. So we've rolled out onto the track for the warm-up lap, and I'll go ahead and cut out most of the warm-up lap since we're just sort of weaving back and forth, warming up the brakes and the tires and trying to keep the tires clean as much as we can as we go around the track. So I'll see you as we come around the final corner and head up to the green. Alright, so we are coming out of the last corner and the pace car is heading into the pits. So now I take the field and I have control of the pace, and trying to go fast enough to be in a good spot to accelerate, but also a speed that the starter will think is fair. And so the green flag flies, and there's another Formula Ford behind me, but remember, he's a little bit slower, but he gets a big jump. Now this is, I think, more evidence that our engine is down on power, especially on the top end, because I don't think I got that bad of a start, and I think the gearing really isn't that far off, but he just pulled way ahead of me going into that first corner. I'm lucky that he was really early on the brakes. If you watched the last race at VIR, you'll probably remember that my shifting was absolutely atrocious. I realized in practice on Friday that the gear linkage there was a bolt that was really loose on the front of it that connects the gear lever to the inside of into the cockpit. And then that was making it really hard. It was putting a lot of play in it, and it was making it really hard to shift, especially into first and third, but also, I mean, pretty much everything. So we fixed that, and after that the shifting is so much easier. I'm still having a little bit of trouble with the downshifting, especially because the footwell in this car is so small that when I jump on the brakes to brake hard into a corner, my right foot, since I'm right foot braking in this car, is actually catching a bit of the throttle pedal, and it's keeping the throttle open as I'm going into the corner. which is really, really bad. And I wear size 11 shoes, so my feet aren't exactly small, but we have to figure out a way, I have to figure out some technique to keep my foot off of the throttle pedal until I want to blip for a downshift. And I think that was contributing a lot to some of my difficulties with downshifting and entering corners, and it was costing me time too because it was expanding the brake zone out quite a bit. Now if you take a look at the throttle graphic in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, that throttle data is actually coming from the sensor in the engine's throttle body. It's the same sensor that's feeding information into the ECU. A lot of race cars have a potentiometer that's actually connected to the throttle pedal in the cockpit, and then you can zero it when you're completely off the throttle so that it shows that the throttle pedal is completely closed. If you look at this one, even when I'm on the brakes or like transitioning from the throttle to the brakes, there's just a little bit of throttle open. That's the information that's being fed into the ECU, so it's not entirely accurate. The throttle is closed even though it's showing that there's a little bit open. But if there's more than that sort of, maybe, I think it's 7% it was saying on the data, if it looks like it's more than 7% open, then that means that I'm getting, I'm catching the throttle pedal as I'm on the brakes. And another point to note is that I said in the intro that the race is 11 laps, but I have 12 laps set up on the overlay. That's just because the data system counts the warm-up lap as a race lap. It doesn't really know the difference. So I've added an extra lap to account for that so you guys know when I'm on the final lap. Otherwise it would say that the final lap is lap 12 out of 11. I think the hairpin here at the end of the lap is especially problematic, where I was getting a lot of gas with the brake pedal. Another thing that I noticed watching the video here, but I didn't really see it on the track, is how the tire is wearing on the right-hand side of the car. I don't know if it was doing it the same on the left-hand side, but you can see it looks clean now. But as I go through the corners, there's a lot of wear on the inside, and then it sort of looks kind of marbly and like gummy in the middle. You can see right there, there's a very distinctive shade difference between the inside and the outside. I think that that's sort of an indication of that there's too much camber, negative camber in the car, but frankly I'm not entirely sure. We don't really know what the setup is. The engineer that helped us put the car together sort of threw a very basic setup on it, and it needs a lot of optimization. And frankly, it's one of the things that I sort of have to learn as the season goes on. It's also worth noting that this is the third race weekend for this set of tires, so they're sort of getting long in the tooth. I can't really, I mean, not that I have much to complain about, but my performance was still pretty good, even though the tires are almost finished. They're at the end of their life cycle, so I can't blame too much on them. But that wear pattern is something that I have to look into, and it's probably costing us time. So what happened behind me after the start, the one Formula 4 that you saw going into the first corner, he got caught up with one of the Formula 500s and they started battling, and that helped me just drive away. So they are way long gone in my mirrors at this point, and I'm out in front by myself. So right now, since it sort of seems like I mean, there's still 7 laps left, but it kind of seems like all the pressure is off me. So I'm starting to think about, you know, I have one more race, I have one qualifying and race tomorrow. Should I back off a little bit and save the tires? I definitely should work on consistency, trying to hit my marks as much as I can, and try to figure out if I can find a solution to my problem in the footbox with hitting the gas pedal when I'm going to the corners. Heading up into the hairpin here, if you look at the throttle position, you can see that it's held a little bit more open than it should be. And that's an example of catching the throttle while I'm on the brake. You can sort of hear it in the engine too, it kind of labors a bit more than it should. Somebody had a bad day there. You can see the tire marks heading off into the grass. I don't know what caused that. Very strange place to go off. And something I found interesting, if you consider the last corner in this sequence, which you're coming up to, it's right after this blind left-hander. The right-hander that you can see right now. I raced an F2000 car here back in 2015, which is the bigger brother to these cars. It has a 2-liter engine, they have wings, they have, I think, slightly softer, bigger slick tires. So they have a lot more grip, especially with the aero. And that corner is easy flat, no real problems at all. You might get a little bit of understeer, but it's not really dramatic. But in these cars, it's a little bit, it's still pretty darn near flat out, but it's a little bit sketchier. And here I get a terrible, terrible downshift, and have trouble finding the right gear to drive away. But what I was saying about that turn, I don't know exactly what number it is. But I think it's a good highlight for the difference between the F2000 cars and the F1600 cars. Especially at higher speeds, you have a lot less grip in these cars. And turns that would normally be not dramatic, especially the really fast right-hander before the hairpin. In this car, it's also not really dramatic, but you just don't quite have as much confidence as you do in the car with wings and bigger aero. This section doesn't really have a great flow to it. The first corner is a little bit slow, and then each successive corner until you get to this one here, which is almost flat out, that I was just talking about. Each one is progressively faster than the last. And right here, I always go down one gear in this corner, but every once in a while, like I did there, I go down into first gear, which is a really silly mistake. And there's no reason for it, so... but I do things like that every once in a while and really have to iron that out. That was much better than the previous lap. I think later on I'm going to make a video dedicated to the gearbox, and we'll take a look inside it and talk about it in more detail. But It's called a dog box transmission, and one thing that's really unique about it is that it's an H pattern gear shifter like you would have on any road car, but it doesn't have synchros, and you don't use the clutch. So when I'm upshifting here, the way that you shift it is that you put some pressure on it, so you sort of preload the gearbox, and the tension from the acceleration is holding it in gear, and then you lift off, you snap your foot off the throttle and back on as fast as you can, and that preload that you're putting in the gear lever with your hand will release that tension, and the preload will sort of almost involuntarily move it into the next gear. So it's very fast shifts. You don't use the clutch at all for upshifts or for downshifts. With downshifts, it's a very similar process, except rather than snapping your foot off the throttle, you're sort of snapping your foot on the throttle. And there's a lot of people that sort of, I think, get the terms heel toe and double clutching sort of confused. We don't double clutch in these cars because we don't use the clutch at all. And actually double clutching is a very slow process that you don't really do in anything other than vintage cars. With synchros, you don't need to do that. With the dog box transmission like there is in this car and most race cars with H-pattern transmissions, you don't need the double clutch. And then heel toe is a completely different thing. You can do both at the same time, but I am heel toeing, using the heel toe technique in this car because I am right foot braking. If you're left foot braking, of course, you won't be using that technique because you don't have to roll your foot from the brake pedal onto the throttle pedal. It's basically just a method of manipulating two pedals at the same time when you're going into the corner. You want to be on the brakes, of course, and you want to blip the throttle for the downshift. And then heel toe is just the way that you do that while you're right foot braking. Of course, if you're left foot braking, then you don't have to do that. You have your left foot on the brake and your right foot is free to blip the throttle. When I was racing in Pro Mazda, we had the sequential, of course, but it had a no lift upshift interrupter, but with downshifting you still had to manually blip the throttle. And since I was left foot braking in the Pro Mazda, we didn't need to bother with heel toe. Of course, that's really up to driver's preference. In this car, like I said, the footbox is really small, so I'm not able to left foot brake, simply because my feet won't get next to each other. But I think it's a good skill to have. If you come up through go-karting, you'll know how to how to left foot brake. But if you can sort of train yourself to think both with the left foot braking and the right foot braking, then you can jump from car to car, and it will take maybe a lap to get used to it or to get your mind in it. But it's good to be able to develop the skills of braking with both feet. And another aspect of the dog box transmission is that you have to be really forceful and decisive with it. Being gentle will not be rewarded with this kind of gearbox. Watching this and comparing it to my race VIR in the last video, I can tell how much better the upshifting is. There's still some kinks to be worked out, of course, going into corners and downshifting, but the upshifting is much more confident and decisive. I don't think I've missed an upshift yet in this race. There we go. There's one missed upshift. This corner, this is the old turn 5 on the north track, and if you notice, I don't think I mentioned this, but they've actually repaved this the North track here, and I think this is the first event that they've had on it. And when they repaved it, I don't think they did it intentionally, but it looks like they sort of reprofiled that turn 5 a little bit. There used to be a good bit of a bowl to it, so you could carry a lot of speed, and it's going uphill, of course, so you can still carry a decent amount of speed, but not quite as much as you used to. And then overall, I think it has a lot more grip than it used to have. It's definitely less bumpy, of course, but I think those bumps will come back in time. And old turn 7, that blind right-hander that used to be, I think, kind of near flat out. I've actually never driven an F1600 car here before, but in the Pro Mazda, it was flat out if you were confident about the line that you were on. In this car, in this race, I think I'm lifting every single time going over it, but it's just a confidence lift. It's really not necessary. And then by the end of race 2, I was still lifting, but I went flat through it a couple times. And aside from not being 100% confident if I had the car in the right place, it was otherwise easy flat. And I think there's a decent margin of error. If you are a foot or 2 or maybe 3 offline from where you want to be, you can still go flat through it. And you have enough track on the exit to make up for a mistake if you are a little bit offline. I think the pro drivers, when they come here, they'll be easy flat every single time going through turn 7, if they weren't already with the old pavement. I think this turn should be flat. I was getting a little bit of understeer, and then sometimes I was getting a little bit of oversteer too, especially with those bumps. And as you can see, I downshifted again into first. Right here, I was giving it a big lift right there, but I think you short shift up into 4th, and you sort of use that as your speed adjustment, and that will set you up well, speed-wise and line-wise. There's, like I said, a bit of a margin of error, margin for error. Lap 11 as we come around start finish for the final lap. The cars behind me are completely gone from my mirrors. I'm out by myself. In turn 1 there is another place where I think I'm massively overslowing. Catching the brake pedal, or catching the throttle pedal going through a bunch of these corners is sort of, especially in turn 1 where you go over a crest in the braking zone, it's very easy to get the rear end of the car unsettled. And if you're not confident on the brakes, then it can really affect how much speed you carry into the corner. Final time by. This was a fairly uneventful race. I think it was good to build my confidence that I was the fastest one here today. But it doesn't make for a super interesting video, so kudos to all of you guys that have stuck around to the end. I can promise you that race 2 will be a lot more exciting. There's a few cars that enter the race on Sunday that weren't in this race, and they make things a lot more dramatic. Some of the other cars in this race found a decent amount of speed that they didn't have before in this race, and so it's going to be a lot more interesting. Through the hairpin for the final time. Messed up the downshift, and I don't even try. The shake of the head. Nobody's in my mirrors. Last corner, last lap. Why not screw it up? And cross start finish, wave of the fist, and we take our first win of actually me ever driving this car. So it's great. It's good to build up the confidence. I think my driving felt a lot better. Despite the problems with the gas and brake pedals going into the corners, I am feeling more comfortable, feeling a little bit more aggressive, and definitely think we're in a better place now than we were even coming out of VIR, which was already pretty good. So we're building up momentum going into the season, and it's a great place to be. So thanks again for watching, guys. Be sure to subscribe, leave a comment if you want to see more videos like this, and stay tuned for the race on Sunday, and stay tuned in a couple weeks when we go to Mont Tremblant. I'll definitely be showing the videos from that with commentary, and we'll take a look at the championship, and we have 3 races that weekend, so hopefully we'll have a lot of racing to come.